There are moments in life when you feel something has shifted, but you cannot quite explain what it is. People no longer listen with the same attention. Your opinions land lighter. Your presence does not seem to carry the same weight it once did. Most of the time, this change is not caused by a single dramatic event. Respect does not usually disappear with an explosion. It fades slowly, through small attitudes, subtle reactions, and quiet habits that you repeat without noticing. That is what makes it so dangerous. You keep living on autopilot while, underneath the surface, the way others see you is being rewritten. Today we are going to start looking at one of these invisible habits. It does not shout. It does not look toxic at first glance. In some people, it even appears as kindness or sensitivity. Yet over time it weakens your identity and makes you easier to ignore. This habit is the constant need for validation. Wanting to be appreciated is normal. Everyone likes to feel seen and supported from time to time. The problem begins when that desire stops being a natural part of human connection and becomes a requirement for you to feel secure. When every choice feels uncertain until someone else confirms that you are right, a quiet dependency is created. Your confidence no longer comes from the inside out. It starts coming from reactions, comments, and expressions that you cannot control. This pattern rarely shows itself in obvious ways. Most people who depend on validation do not spend the whole day asking for approval with their words. They reveal it in smaller, more discreet ways. You finish speaking and instantly scan the faces around you, searching for agreement. You prepare a message, delete it, rewrite it, hesitate, and only send it after imagining how the other person might react. You hold back an idea in a meeting because you are afraid of looking foolish. You agree with something that does not feel right just to avoid the discomfort of being the only one who thinks differently. None of these isolated actions seem dramatic on their own. Together, however, they form a clear signal. You do not fully trust yourself. And whether people realize it consciously or not, they register that signal. They notice the hesitation before you speak. They sense that your tone changes depending on who is in the room. They see that your posture collapses with a simple frown or a neutral reaction. Over time, this has consequences. Someone who does not believe strongly in their own judgment teaches others to doubt it as well. A person who is always looking around before deciding gradually stops being consulted when decisions need to be made. When your mood rises and falls according to how much attention or praise you receive, you start to look emotionally fragile in the eyes of those around you. Respect quietly gives way to something less solid. Tolerance, maybe affection, but not admiration. There is another cost that is even deeper than how others see you. Constantly chasing reassurance distorts the way you see yourself. Instead of asking, "What feels right for me?" your mind creates another question, "What will make people approve of me?" Little by little, your own values become blurry. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay where you would like to leave. You soften truths that should be spoken clearly. You ignore the discomfort that appears every time you betray your own standards, and you cover it with another smile. Living like this is exhausting. You are never fully present in the moment, because part of you is always trying to guess what others are thinking. A simple conversation becomes a mental chess game. A neutral silence turns into a personal threat. A brief criticism echoes much louder than it should. You go to sleep replaying interactions, wondering if you sounded strange, if you looked weak, if you said too much or too little. It is not other people that are draining you. It is the way you surrendered your peace of mind to their reactions. The ancient Stoics understood this very clearly. To them, the person who needs applause to stand upright is never truly standing on their own feet. A life guided by external approval is a life that can be steered from the outside at any moment. One compliment can lift you. One careless comment can destroy your day. Whoever controls your mood in this way controls a large part of your life. The path out of this trap is not about becoming cold or pretending that other people do not matter. It is about reversing the direction of your attention. Before asking what others will think, you pause long enough to ask what you think. Before looking around, you look inward. Before searching for a sign of agreement, you check if you can agree with yourself. This does not mean you will always be certain, but it means that your starting point is no longer fear of rejection. It is honesty. At the beginning, this feels uncomfortable, almost like walking without a hand to hold. You will feel the urge to go back to old patterns. Sending a message to get reassurance, changing your opinion to avoid a reaction, waiting for someone to tell you that you did well. If you resist that urge a little longer each time, something subtle begins to change. You survive even when no one praises you. You start to see that some people respect you more when you hold your position calmly, even if they disagree. Over time, your own opinion about yourself starts to weigh more than the passing mood of the room. From the outside, it may look like nothing special has happened. You are still the same person, saying many of the same things, living in the same places. Internally, though, an important shift has occurred. You are no longer asking the world to tell you who you are. You are beginning to carry that answer inside you, with a little more firmness each day. That is where real respect begins. Not when everyone finally validates you, but when you stop needing that validation to stand straight. When you speak because your words are true, not because you hope they will be admired. When you choose a path because it is aligned with your values, not because it will be seen as impressive. You will still listen to feedback. You will still care about people. But you will no longer be owned by their opinions. This first habit, the constant search for validation, may look harmless, but it silently empties your strength. The moment you decide to break it, even in small steps, is the moment you start taking your respect back from the hands of everyone you had given it to without noticing. Before we move on, support this channel if the message speaks to you. A simple like and subscription helps this community reach more people who are trying to grow through clarity, discipline, and self-awareness. Now, let's explore the second habit that quietly weakens the way others perceive you. Speaking without intention. There is a kind of communication that looks normal on the surface but creates subtle doubts in the minds of those around you. It happens when words leave your mouth before your thoughts finish forming, when you answer too quickly, when you comment on something simply to occupy the moment. Many people talk this way without noticing the effect it creates. They believe they're being friendly, engaged, or expressive. But the impression transmitted is very different, a lack of inner organization. When someone talks without considering what they want to express, their ideas lose precision. Sentences stretch unnecessarily, explanations multiply, and the purpose behind what they're saying becomes unclear. Even when the intention is positive, the delivery sounds scattered. This makes listeners disengage, not because they dislike the person, but because the message demands too much effort to follow. Communication carries weight not only through meaning, but through structure. A composed voice suggests clarity. A rushed response suggests confusion. People may not articulate it consciously, but they feel when a conversation begins drifting. Their attention drops, and with it, the respect they place on the speaker. Over time, this pattern reduces your influence. When your words consistently lack direction, others begin assuming that your thoughts lack direction as well. This habit appears in different forms. Some individuals over-explain. They offer background information that nobody paid you, attempt to justify trivial details, or revisit points that were already understood. Others speak rapidly as if silence were dangerous. They fear pauses, so they fill every gap with noise. There are also those who respond immediately to avoid discomfort, even though their minds are still searching for the right idea. All these behaviors share one consequence: they dilute your impact. A person who talks impulsively often regrets what they've said. They notice contradictions, exaggerations, or unnecessary confessions only after they've left their mouth. This erodes self-trust. The voice you hear in your own mind begins sounding unreliable, and when that happens, it becomes even harder to express yourself with confidence. Intentional speech produces the opposite effect. When you give yourself a moment to understand what you want to communicate, your message becomes more direct. A short pause signals thoughtfulness. People interpret it as presence, not insecurity. Your tone becomes steadier because it follows a clear intention rather than emotional tension. Think of someone you admire. Chances are, they don't talk endlessly. They choose their words carefully. They know when to say less. They allow silence to work in their favor. Their confidence isn't loud, it's structured. Listeners feel guided, not overwhelmed. Speaking with intention begins long before the words reach your lips. It starts with the willingness to think, to observe what the moment requires, to recognize when your emotion wants to speak before your reason. to decide whether what you're about to say has value. Most people skip this step. They speak first and reflect later. But reflection after the fact cannot fix the impression created in the moment. One measured sentence can convey more strength than a long explanation. One clear statement can resolve what 10 scattered paragraphs cannot. One quiet moment of thought can refine your entire presence. This is not about being brief at all costs. Depth has its place. What matters is coherence. A person who organizes their ideas communicates trustworthiness. Their voice becomes a reference. Their silence feels intentional, not empty. Interacting with them feels grounding. When you speak with intention, you also change the way you listen. You stop waiting for your turn to respond and begin absorbing what the other person is actually saying. This creates balance. Conversations become exchanges instead of emotional reactions. And with that balance comes another layer of respect. The recognition that you are capable of staying centered even when the moment feels tense or unpredictable. The shift toward intentional communication happens gradually. You don't transform from one day to the next. It starts with small decisions. Waiting a breath longer before answering, choosing clarity over speed, trimming sentences that exist only to soften discomfort. Over time, these small adjustments create a new rhythm, and people respond to that rhythm with more attention. Your ideas gain traction. Your voice develops stability. Your presence becomes more defined. Speaking impulsively creates disorder around you and inside you. Speaking with intention creates alignment. When your words reflect a clear mind rather than a restless one, people notice. They may not be able to explain the difference, but they feel more anchored in your presence. They interpret your tone as maturity. They recognize someone who doesn't allow emotion to rush ahead of thought. And that recognition quietly elevates the respect you receive. Intentional speech isn't about talking less. It's about talking with purpose. It's about allowing your words to represent who you truly are, rather than the confusion of the moment. It's about bringing structure to your voice so your message carries the weight it deserves. This habit, once refined, transforms not only the way others listen to you but the way you listen to yourself. Some habits don't look harmful until you examine the trail they leave behind. Avoiding responsibility is one of them. It rarely appears as a dramatic refusal. In most cases, it hides behind excuses that sound reasonable, explanations that seem harmless, or delays that look like caution. Yet, each time you distance yourself from your own role in a situation, a part of your presence diminishes. People might not confront you about it, but they notice when you step back from the weight of your choices. Responsibility is not just about taking blame when something goes wrong. It is the posture you adopt toward your life. It reflects how you handle commitments, how you follow through, how you respond to challenges, and how you deal with consequences. When someone avoids this internal anchor, everything around them starts to drift. This habit often begins subtly. You tell yourself that a problem isn't really yours. You delay a conversation because it feels uncomfortable. You stay quiet when you should speak up. You convince yourself that circumstances were unfair, or that someone else should have taken the lead. None of these moments seem important when they happen, but they connect. They create a pattern of stepping aside from your own power. Over time, this avoidance becomes visible. People sense hesitation in your posture. They sense caution where there should be clarity. They sense reluctance in situations that require firmness. And whether they say it or not, their confidence in you weakens. Someone who consistently avoids responsibility unintentionally communicates something about themselves, that they cannot be trusted to carry weight. When you repeatedly sidestep difficult tasks or uncomfortable truths, people start handling you with care, not out of respect, but out of low expectations. They assume you will disappear when something demands courage. They assume you will stay silent when the moment calls for initiative. This subtle shift affects friendships, relationships, and professional environments alike. Avoiding responsibility also shapes the way you relate to your own potential. When you look away from your role in your circumstances, you lose the opportunity to grow. You begin to believe that the world is happening to you, not with you. Challenges start to feel like traps instead of invitations. Failures look like injustices instead of information. And progress becomes slow because you are always waiting for conditions to improve rather than improving yourself within those conditions. This internal posture affects your confidence. When you don't own your decisions, you can't fully trust your direction. When you rely on excuses, you weaken your foundation. When you shift blame, you distance yourself from your own growth. The result is a quiet erosion of dignity, not because you failed, but because you didn't stand where you should have stood. People with strong presence aren't defined by perfection. They are defined by ownership. They take responsibility for their actions, their reactions, and their impact. Even when they make mistakes, they face the situation directly. This directness creates stability. It shows that the person is willing to confront reality without hiding behind stories. Avoiding responsibility creates the opposite atmosphere. Conversations become vague. Projects slow down. Decisions lose confidence. Interactions feel uncertain. And when uncertainty repeats long enough, respect gradually fades. This habit often grows stronger when someone fears conflict. You might avoid responsibility because you want to keep the peace. You might worry that admitting fault will diminish you. You might believe that confronting issues will push people away. But in reality, the opposite happens. Avoidance may protect you from discomfort in the moment, yet it costs you something greater afterward: credibility. People don't need you to be flawless. They need you to be accountable. When you acknowledge your part in a situation, you show maturity. When you follow through with what you promised, you demonstrate reliability. These behaviors create a quiet authority that others naturally respect. Taking responsibility also changes the way you experience yourself. You stop running from your choices. You stop fearing consequences. Instead, you begin to stand on firmer ground. Even when a situation is challenging, you know you're capable of meeting it. You don't look for escape routes. You don't need to create excuses. You don't weaken your own story. You simply do what needs to be done, and that posture transforms the atmosphere around you. The path out of avoidance starts with honesty. Ask yourself where you tend to step back. Notice which tasks you delay for reasons that sound logical but feel hollow. Observe the situations where you remain silent because action would demand courage. From there, the shift happens in small decisions. You answer the message you've been avoiding. You admit your part in a misunderstanding. You finish the task that has been waiting for weeks. Each small action builds a layer of strength. The more you step forward instead of stepping away, the more your identity aligns with responsibility instead of fear. With time, people begin responding differently. Your presence feels more grounded. Your words carry more conviction. Your actions create more trust. You become someone whose reliability is felt, not claimed. Respect returns because your posture invites it. Avoiding responsibility may feel like a harmless way to protect yourself, but it drains far more than it preserves. When you reclaim this habit, when you stop turning away from the moments that define you, something fundamental shifts. You become the kind of person others rely on, and more importantly, the kind of person you can rely on yourself. There are moments when you look back at something you said and wonder why the words came out that way. You recognize the reaction wasn't truly yours, at least not the version of you that thinks clearly. It came from a place you didn't control in the moment. This is the hidden cost of impulsive reactions. They reveal parts of you that you would never choose to display under calm conditions. Among the habits that silently dissolve respect, reacting without composure is one of the most damaging. It turns small situations into unnecessary conflicts. It exposes emotions that would be better handled privately. It sends the message that the world can easily steer your behavior. And when people see that, their perception of your strength shifts. Impulsive reactions rarely feel harmful while they're happening. They feel justified. A comment irritates you, and your tone sharpens. Someone disagrees, and you interrupt. You feel pressured, and your voice rises. The moment heats up, and your patience disappears. Everything seems natural in the heat of emotion. But once the intensity drops, the damage becomes clearer. Words spoken in a rush often carry more force than intended. Your expression, your posture, your timing, all of it leaves an impression. And that impression stays long after the moment ends. A person who reacts instantly to discomfort communicates something without meaning to, that their emotions are steering the wheel. When your reactions come before your judgment, people instinctively become cautious around you. Not fearful, cautious. They start choosing their words carefully, not because they respect your boundaries, but because they know you may be unpredictable. They may avoid asking for your opinion because they're unsure how you'll respond. Opposing you becomes harder for them, not because your perspective is strong, but because they want to avoid the tension that follows. This kind of atmosphere weakens your presence. You do not want people around you adjusting themselves to protect your temper. You want them adjusting because they take your voice seriously. And those two outcomes could not be more different. Impulsive reactions don't always erupt as visible anger. Sometimes they emerge as impatience, sarcasm, defensiveness, or a rushed attempt to prove a point. They appear when you interpret a question as criticism, or when you feel challenged and respond before understanding the situation. They show up when your mind jumps to the worst interpretation of someone's intentions. In every case, the common thread is the same. The reaction comes before reflection. This habit forms easily. When tension rises, the body pushes you to act quickly. The mind speeds up. You want to protect your image or your comfort. You want control of the moment, ironically, by surrendering control of yourself. And because emotional impulses are fast, you may not even notice how often they take the lead. But here is the truth most people avoid. Reacting quickly does not make you strong. It makes you exposed. The strongest presence in any room belongs to the person who refuses to be rushed. Someone who listens fully before answering. Someone who allows a pause to settle the atmosphere. Someone whose tone does not shift with every change of mood around them. This kind of presence communicates a simple message. Your actions come from intention, not impulse. The difference is profound. When a person reacts impulsively, the environment shapes their behavior. When a person responds deliberately, they shape the environment. To reach this level of self-governance, you do not need to suppress your emotions. You need to slow their path. A moment of restraint can redirect the entire situation. A single breath can prevent an unnecessary argument. Taking a second to understand what you feel often reveals that the emotion will pass faster than you expected. Most conflicts grow because someone reacts in the exact second of emotional discomfort. Meanwhile, many of those conflicts could disappear if the person waited long enough for the first wave of tension to settle. Impulse creates distortion. Presence restores clarity. If you practice allowing the moment to slow down, you begin noticing things you used to miss. The intention behind the other person's words, the context, the misunderstandings, the emotional triggers inside yourself. Situations that once felt like attacks start looking like opportunities to respond with composure. Composure does not mean silence. It means sovereignty. People respect those who maintain stability under pressure. They are drawn to those whose reactions are shaped by thinking, not by instinct. They feel safer around someone who does not escalate tension. They trust someone whose emotional rhythm is steady. All of this is communicated before a single word is spoken. Breaking the habit of impulsive reaction does not require dramatic change. It begins with simple awareness. Notice when your heart speeds up. Notice when your voice wants to rise. Notice the tightening in your chest that precedes frustration. If you can catch the moment before it spills into action, you regain agency. With practice, that brief pause becomes natural. The moment of reflection becomes instinctive. Your reactions start aligning with your values, not with momentary agitation. As this internal shift stabilizes, the external world responds in kind. People stop feeling defensive around you. They begin to value your input more. Conflicts decrease not because the world became kinder, but because your presence stopped feeding unnecessary fires. You become someone whose judgment can be trusted, whose emotions do not dictate the atmosphere, and whose voice carries authority without force. Reacting impulsively may feel like a minor habit, but its impact is profound. It shapes the way others interpret your strength, your reliability, and your emotional maturity. When you replace that impulse with chosen responses, you regain a kind of dignity that cannot be faked. This habit defines the difference between living as a passenger to your emotions and living as the one who guides them. There is a point in everyone's life when the world stops responding the way it once did. People listen differently, your words don't create the same effect, and your presence feels lighter. When that shift happens, most individuals look outward trying to identify who changed, what changed, or why the environment seems colder. But the truth often begins in a quieter place: the way you treat yourself. Among all habits that diminish respect, neglecting your own needs and boundaries has the deepest impact. It doesn't make noise. It doesn't create obvious conflict. It works slowly, removing pieces of your identity until you barely notice something important is missing. Self-disrespect rarely starts with a dramatic event. It shows up in decisions that seem small. You keep saying yes when you need space. You force yourself to endure situations that drain your energy. You pretend indifference when something affects you deeply. Each one of these choices seems harmless in the moment, but they accumulate. They shape the way you relate to yourself. And as that relationship weakens, people instinctively adjust their behavior toward you. They sense when your boundaries collapse too easily. They sense when you stay quiet although something feels wrong. They sense when you allow things you once would have confronted. Without consciously intending to do so, they begin treating you according to the way you've been treating yourself. The most damaging part is not the external reaction, it's the inner effect. When you consistently set aside your own truth, something inside you grows uncertain. You hesitate before speaking. You doubt your intuition. You second-guess even simple decisions. The gap between who you are and who you pretend to be widens. And when that gap becomes large enough, your voice loses its center. Once that happens, it doesn't matter how loudly you speak. Your tone lacks conviction because it isn't supported by self-loyalty. People respond differently to someone who is not grounded in their own values. They notice when your words contradict your actions. They notice when you accept behavior that hurts you. They notice when you abandon your own standards to keep someone close. Even if they don't judge you, they recognize the instability. And instability, over time, weakens any form of respect. Self-disrespect also distorts the way you interpret your experiences. When you avoid taking your own needs seriously, you begin to justify situations that shouldn't be justified. You tolerate what drains your peace. You blame yourself for dynamics you didn't create. You even convince yourself that wanting better is selfish. This internal distortion grows quietly. You may believe you are being patient or understanding, when in reality you are slowly becoming smaller in your own life. The result is a form of emotional exhaustion that feels heavy but difficult to name. Restoring respect, both from others and from yourself, begins with honesty. Not dramatic confessions, but quiet recognition. Where have you abandoned your own limits? When did you choose silence instead of truth? What did you tolerate because speaking up felt uncomfortable? Which promises to yourself were broken because they felt inconvenient? These questions can hurt, but they open a door. They make it possible to rebuild the part of you that was neglected. Repair does not require sudden transformation. It begins with tiny acts of alignment. You acknowledge what bothers you instead of swallowing it. You refuse situations that conflict with your values. You choose conversations that support your growth. These actions may seem small, but they gradually reshape your identity. They bring coherence back into your life. They reintroduce stability into your posture. And people feel that shift long before you speak about it. When you start honoring yourself again, something subtle changes in the way you communicate. Your tone becomes steadier. Your decisions gain firmness. Your presence feels grounded instead of hesitant. Even the way you move reflects that internal realignment. This doesn't happen because you became harder. It happens because you stopped betraying your own truth. The world responds differently to someone who carries themselves with inner respect. People push fewer boundaries. Conversations become clearer. Your contributions are taken more seriously. Your silence is no longer interpreted as weakness. This is not arrogance, it's alignment. A person who respects themselves doesn't need approval to justify their choices. Their boundaries are not a threat to others. They are a reminder that dignity begins internally. Rebuilding self-respect is not about rejecting everyone or creating distance. It's about recognizing the value of your own voice. It's about strengthening the part of you that was quiet for too long. It's about choosing the discomfort of honesty over the comfort of self-abandonment. There will be moments when this feels unfamiliar. It takes time to trust your own instincts again. It takes courage to say no without apology. It takes presence to stand firm when your old habits would have folded. But each time you honor your limits, you rebuild a part of your identity that never should have been compromised. Respect from others grows in the space created by self-respect. People cannot value you more than you value yourself. They cannot trust your voice if you silence it. They cannot take your boundaries seriously if you ignore them. When you treat yourself with consistency, others naturally respond with the same tone. If this message reached something in you, write, "I choose to respect myself today," in the comments. And if the video added value to your life, like and subscribe to help this community reach more people who are rebuilding themselves with intention.